Hello everyone and welcome back to the workshop. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a simple circle cutting jig for your router. Now it's going to be a no frills job, but it will do what you need it to do. And I'm also going to use it to make a circle cutting template for your router to use with a guide bush, which will give you a perfect circle, but it'll also give you a perfect disc which won't have a centre hole in it. So I'll bring it in closer now and I'll show you how we mark it out. This is the router I'm going to be using for this demonstration. It's a little bit big for certain things, but it's all I have at the moment. My little router gave up the ghost. So the fixing points I'm going to be using on this router is here and here. Now they are centered on the bit, so that makes it easy for marking out. And if you measure from center to center, they are 80 millimeters. So that's the router. So now we move on to the piece, and the simple way of doing this is, if I could find me tape, this piece of stuff happens to be 140 mil wide. So I'm going to come back 70, so it's kind of centered on the base of the router. And I'm going to get a center line on it as well. So that's the center line, and I just square in a line there. So now this is the center point of the bit, this point here. So if I need 80 mil, so that's 40 mil either side. So those are the center points of my fixing point for the balls to go into the base plate of the router. Now what I normally do, because you have one line here, what I would normally do is just add another few, just come off that line, let me just even go 25 either side, and from the center point of the bit draw more lines. So you end up with something like that. I'll explain the reason for these in a few moments, but at the minute I need to bore a hole to allow the bit to come through, and the holes for the two fixing points. The fixing screws for the router have a flat head on them, so I need to counter bore for that flat head and then just bore the hole. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll fix it to the base of the router. That's it. Ready to be fixed to the router. Okay, now we just need to affix this to the base of the router with the 2 screws. Line up the holes. I recommend if you're fixing things to the base of your router to only do this with a hand screwdriver. Don't be tempted to use a cordless drill or something, because you'll just rip the threads out of the aluminium base and that'll be the end of that one. Okay, with the jig screwed in place, the next thing we need to do is find a centre point for the circle that we need to cut. So for that, you lower the base until the bit protrudes past the jig, and depending on whether you're wanting to make a hole or a disc. If you're wanting the disc size to be a certain size, you measure from the inside of the cutting bit out, or if you're wanting to make a hole a certain size, you measure from the outside of the bit down. I need to make a hole. Now I know that the hole I need to make for the template I need to make is 208 millimeters. So half of 208 is 104. So you just measure from the outside of the bit down 104, like that. So I'll bore a little pilot hole there now to allow a screw to go into the piece, and that'll be perfect. But the reason for all these lines is that if you have that one there in your centre and you're out by a millimetre or 1.5 millimetres, you're not going to be able to put another hole beside that one, because it'll still be the same. So if you can measure out on any of the lines, a matter of fact any point, it's just I put the lines to make it simple, but you can measure out any point off, so long as you're working off the centre of the bit, any point to give you, you know, you can adjust it to 105 out here instead of 104. It'll still work the very same. So that's the idea of this with all the lines. Like I have an old jig that I was using, and as you can see, I've used several holes all over it to make fine adjustments to the hole that I'm making. So with this done, like I said, I'm just going to bore a pilot hole here, and then we'll put a piece on the bench and we'll see how it works. Okay, I just have a test piece screwed to a sacrificial piece here on the bench. Screws are the quickest and easiest clamps you're going to find in the workshop. So I'm just going to find the centre point of this. I just join the corners. And that's the centre point. So get another screw through the hole I made in the jig. And I'm going to line that up with the centre point on the plywood. And bore it down, put it down. I normally tighten it and then let it back a small bit so that it'll turn. With the plunge depth set on the router here, I know that it'll go just through the 1/2 inch plywood, so it'll just cleanly cut it out. So with that done, we'll set up and we'll let her go spin. And there you have it. One perfectly cut disc and one perfectly cut hole. So I just want to check that was supposed to be 208 millimeters, and it is measuring 208 millimeters. So couldn't ask for more than that. So I'm going to do a quick change on the router, and I'm going to bring you back, and now I'm going to show you how to use this template to make repetitive holes using the guide bush on the router. Okay, with the guide bush now installed on the router, using the same two fixing points as I used for the jig, hopefully you can see I'm still using the same 1/2 inch bit, but I have a 30mm collet. Now, simple maths, it's a 13mm bit off a 30mm collet leaves 17, and divide that by 2 is 8.5. So I was on an 8.5 offset from the outside of the guide bush to the cutting edge of the router bit. So hence, when I made the hole 208, when I cut with this, I will end up with a hole 191. So that's the plan anyway. So we'll just set up the piece of plywood, and I'll just give a demonstration on cutting that. Okay, this is the test piece we're going to use to cut the circle. Now, considering there's going to be no fixation on the disc when we cut it this way, I recommend that we turn it upside down and just use some pieces of double-sided tape. That should be enough to hold that piece from getting caught by the router bit. As you can see, you'll feel that it's even catching already. So I'll just use our multi-purpose clamps again, i.e. screws. And I still need to set the depth on the plunge router, so I'm just going to go out to the side, plunge down to just where it comes through, set the guile, and that should give a perfect plunge cut. So just a dust extraction then, and away we'll go. Okay, there you have one perfectly cut hole, which we already had by cutting with the jig. The difference is, oh my god, that got stuck well with the glue or the double-sided tape. That wasn't going to fall out. You have a disc with no centre hole. So for the project I'm doing, the next project I'm doing, I needed a perfect hole, but I also needed a disc that didn't have a centre point, not to be trying to fill it. So I have what I wanted. Just wanted to give everyone an idea of how I make these jigs and templates. I normally store these. I'd normally write on them what size it is and what size bush I use on the router. I'd normally write it on the side. Put it in the press. You mightn't need it for 6 months, but it'll be there if you want it. One other thing I wanted to hit on when I was talking about this is whether you're using the jig on the router or using it with a guide bush inside the template with the router. Because the bit in the router turns in a clockwise direction, you need to move the router in a clockwise direction with the jig or inside in the template. Other than that, it'll be trying to pull back on it and it'll be trying to come away from the template. So you need to keep it moving clockwise. Okay, just little tip. Okay guys, that's a simple little video now, just showing you how I make my circles. There'll be a hole or a disc without a hole. That's how I do it. So I hope you've taken something from the old video, and if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, maybe you might consider hitting the old subscribe button. Maybe we'll get this old channel moving. So until next time, thanks very much.